My ex-hubby got lover pregnant and left me 15 years ago. Smirked. My kid's not yours, so handsome. Amelia, a 46-year-old occupational therapist, was enjoying a family-friendly vacation when she bumped into her ex-husband John from 15 years ago. The encounter was awkward, to say the least. "You're single, so what are you doing in a family-friendly joint?" A woman sneered, her voice dripping with suspicion. "Maybe you're cheating or something." Amelia bristled. "It's none of your business," she retorted, her voice tight. "Wow, really? On a cheating trip?" "Still doing that, I see." The woman scoffed, her eyes narrowed. "Good thing I left you. Poor thing. A 46-year-old cheated on his wife." John burst out laughing, his amusement adding insult to injury. Amelia frowned in discomfort as two handsome young boys approached her. "Millie, do you know him?" one of the boys asked, his voice laced with concern. "Just someone from the past," Amelia replied, trying to soothe her sons. "He's a stranger now. Don't worry about it." John was shocked to see Amelia chatting happily with her sons. His face contorted into a comical expression of disbelief, and Amelia couldn't help but laugh. The memory of their divorce, a painful chapter in her life, flooded back. It had been 15 years ago, just 2 years into their marriage, and on their anniversary, no less. John had blindsided her with a request for divorce. She had met John 3 years prior when she was 28. A colleague had introduced them, and John, a refreshing 29-year-old working in sales, had swept her off her feet. They had fallen deeply in love, married, and were eager to start a family. However, when they struggled to conceive, John's mother, Mia, persistently suggested they get tested. Reluctantly, they agreed, and when it was clear there were no issues on Amelia's end, the interference began. Mia bombarded them with suggestions for fertility treatments and pressured them to increase their intimacy, creating a rift between Amelia and John. The immense pressure, coupled with John's late returns home and dwindling conversations, led to Amelia's irregular periods. One day, John came home smelling of perfume. "You're always late," Amelia accused, her voice trembling. "What are you doing out there? You're not cheating, are you?" "I'm just hanging out with women," John replied, his voice cold. "I can't stand being with you." Amelia confronted him about his cheating, her voice laced with pain. "How do you think I feel every day? Your mother, Mia, not only calls me wanting grandchildren, but also shows up at our house to pressure us. You're never home, so the complaints towards me have increased, and now you're cheating? I'm losing my mind." John let out a huge sigh, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and resentment. "Is everything my fault? I'm mentally cornered too, you know. I'm sick of your gloomy face and the constant talk about kids. Don't think you're the only one suffering." "But that doesn't justify cheating," Amelia cried. John scoffed, his face hardening. "As if you're not cheating too." Confused by the baseless accusation, Amelia was puzzled. "What?" "The woman I'm cheating with told me it's suspicious we don't have kids, even though you're healthy," John said, his voice laced with venom. "She even showed me a photo of you and a young man entering a hotel together. Are you going to deny it?" "That's not me," Amelia exclaimed, her voice rising in anger. "I'm taking medication prescribed by my gynecologist, but it's completely unrelated." John wouldn't listen. "No need to hide it. I know you've been seeing other men. Let's just keep this facade of a marriage going. It works out for both of us." He seemed relieved, but Amelia's head was a mess. Soon after, John told her his mistress was pregnant. "Millie's thrilled about seeing her grandchild," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You're no longer needed, so just sign the divorce papers now. You can openly see other men." Amelia, heartbroken and numb, simply agreed to the divorce. Afterward, John, clearly in a good mood, started babbling about his affair partner. "She's just 21, a college student about to graduate in 6 months, he said, his voice brimming with pride. "She's in the early stages of pregnancy, so her belly isn't that noticeable yet. Her parents were concerned about our 10-year age gap and her still being a student, but I convinced them that I have a stable job and can take responsibility." "It was tense meeting them, but everything worked out perfectly in the end," he continued, his voice dripping with smugness. Amelia felt nothing but disgust. She had become a stranger to him, and running into him like this had plunged her previously joyful mood into the depths. "It's been a while. Try to smile a bit," John said, his voice laced with a smugness that grated on her nerves. Seriously, you are so uncharming compared to my wife. Hey, we've been a happy family since our divorce, he continued, his annoyingly fresh smile making Amelia even more irritated. Jealous much? Behind him stood a charming woman and a boy. They were the woman and her son who had caused their divorce. Yeah, my son looks cute like my wife, doesn't he? John said, his voice dripping with pride. He's quite popular at school. Watching him happily talk about them, Amelia felt an urge to leave immediately, but she had reasons to stay. I bet your mother is happy too, she said, her voice strained. Yeah, she's head over heels in love with her grandchild. So much it's almost troubling, John replied, his voice laced with a hint of annoyance. I keep telling myself I made the right choice. Even got a PR promotion to manager at work. Everything's going my way. Behind him, the boy gave Amelia a nod while his wife glared. I get she's not thrilled seeing her husband talk to his ex, Amelia said, trying to keep her voice calm. But if anyone should be angry, it's me. Sorry for all the happy talk, John said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Where's your playmate? Introduce me. The people I'm with are too good for you, Amelia retorted, her voice cold. I prefer if you just left. John seemed oddly triumphant. So you're meeting a bunch of guys? Planning some loser convention? How do you even have suitors at your age? His words were baffling. How could he be so callous, so insensitive, especially in front of his teenage son? You seem to be misunderstanding something, Amelia said, her voice steady. I'm just here on a trip. If you keep this up, I worry about your son's future. Jealous? Just remarry and have kids if you're so bitter, John said, his voice laced with disdain. Oh, but maybe it's too late for you. Pathetic, really. His son sighed and sat on a nearby bench, starting to play with his smartphone. The woman wrapped her arm around John's, giving Amelia a sly smile. To an outsider, they might look like a happy couple chatting with an acquaintance, but Amelia could see the taunting in her eyes. Their unpleasant nature matched each other perfectly. Concerned because she's the ex-wife, John said to his wife, his voice dripping with fake kindness. The woman shyly nodded. She's nothing to worry about. Just wanted to share a bit of our happiness with her. They started being overly affectionate, showing off in public, drawing uncomfortable attention their way. After the sickening display, John turned to Amelia with a broad grin. Were you watching us the whole time? You're crazy, you know. Right back at you, Amelia retorted, her voice laced with disgust. Doing this in a tourist spot with everyone watching. Your son seems to have walked away in disgust. Amelia noticed their son leaving with a troubled look as they got cozy. A kid having to see that? Amelia felt sorry for him. Teenagers find it too intense, but it's normal at home, John said, his voice nonchalant. And he never complains, so it's probably fine. Hearing this, Amelia was truly relieved that she never had children with this man. He couldn't seriously say that. Think about his feelings for once. It didn't carry much weight coming from someone who had never raised kids. If you want children so badly, maybe I could let you borrow my son once in a while, Amelia said, her voice laced with sarcasm. You'd enjoy playing family, wouldn't you? Amelia's voice rose in protest to John's outrageous remark. What are you even saying? What do you think your own child is? You do know that kids his age have rebellious phases, right? Both John and his wife looked astonished. It's perfectly normal to feel repulsed by parents' over-the-top displays of affection, Amelia continued, her voice steady. He left because he didn't want to be associated with that. What do you mean it doesn't bother him or I'll lend him out? Don't treat your child like a tool. Show some respect. Shut up, John snarled, his voice laced with anger. Acting all high and mighty. But are you really the great woman who can't have kids? Can be played around with and then dumped just like when I divorced you. Realizing arguing with the two of them, justifying herself was pointless, Amelia decided to stay quiet. She couldn't come back with anything. Her must have hit the mark. Meddling in someone else's family business is just raw, you know. We're happy. If you're thinking of messing with that, it won't end well for you. What? I haven't done anything wrong, Amelia said, her voice laced with anger. If anyone wants to take action, it should be me, right? As Amelia glared at them, John approached her, his face contorted with malice. You were cheating too, right? He said, his voice dripping with venom. It's all the same. You have no right to complain. Just be thankful I did and ask for alimony. I've kept the photos from your affair ready to spread them online, you know. Amelia felt sick with John so close. I haven't cheated, she said, her voice trembling. How can you? Those images are fabricated. Even your son not being your own flesh and blood. Don't just blame me, John interrupted, his voice cold. Try talking things out with your wife. Behind John, the woman's face went pale. Just then, a familiar voice cut through the tension. Millie, do you know them? You're too close. Could you please step back? Two handsome young men stepped in to protect Amelia from John. Just someone from the past, but now we're strangers, so don't worry about it, Amelia said, trying to calm her sons. Besides, how long are you going to keep Mr. Husband's name waiting? Millie's getting tired of it. What? What's this all about? John asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Are you still unmarried and on some affair trip again? The two handsome young men stood protectively in front of Amelia, facing John. Her son's arrival threw John into visible disarray, and he blurted out something absurd. No way, you're sugar dating with these young guys? Seriously messed up, dude. What are you talking about? These are my biological sons. They're known at their school as the Miracle Twins because they are handsome, brilliant, and athletic. Amelia placed her hands on her son's shoulders, and they gave her an embarrassed look. Stop it, one of the boys said, his voice laced with exasperation. We're just normal middle schoolers according to everyone else. But I don't mind it. Makes me want to keep doing my best. Their smiles reminded Amelia of their father. Boys, say hello to this man and woman, Amelia said, her voice calm. John still couldn't grasp the reality. His mouth hung open in disbelief. I'm Henry, the eldest in Prince Junior High School, one of the boys said politely. My hobbies are reading and running early in the morning, and recently I've also developed an interest in politics. I'm Liam, the younger one, attending the same school as my brother, the other boy said, his voice polite. I'm in the soccer team, and I'm putting in the effort to match my accomplished brother in studies. As they greeted John and his wife politely, whispers of, "What nice boys," could be heard around them. Only John's wife seemed displeased. They attend a selective middle school, right? With high standards at that, John said, his voice laced with suspicion. And why are these kids so tall? Don't tell me you had hidden children before marrying me. Millie, this guy is really strange, one of the boys said, his voice laced with concern. Are you sure you know him? Should we call the police? Not surprising this man is odd, the other boy said, his voice shaking slightly. Did you hear the conversation from halfway through? His voice was so loud, and that woman over there, her smile seemed fake. Liam and I were worried you'd get tangled up with someone weird because we were late for our meetup. Liam nodded vigorously next to his brother. What reliable sons I have, Amelia said, her voice filled with pride. Sorry to worry you, but yes, I know them. Can you wait a bit longer? Reluctantly, her sons moved away from John and Amelia. No hidden children here, Amelia said, her voice firm. I remarried and had them after. They might seem mature for their age, which leads to misunderstandings, but they are only 13 like their father. They have kind hearts and strong wills. My pride and joy. So you were really just here on a trip, but where's your husband? John asked, his eyes scanning the area suspiciously. He had sudden work come up and is handling it remotely at the hotel, Amelia replied. The boys wanted to visit a specific store, so we split up for a bit. I was enjoying my time until you approached, which ruined my mood. Amelia sighed dramatically, her face etched with exasperation. You're lying, John said, his voice laced with malice. You got dumped again, didn't you? Amelia couldn't understand why he was so keen on seeing her as unmarried. She wouldn't like about such nonsense. Please don't say weird things in front of my sons anymore. As Amelia glared at John, she noticed her son Liam in the background. That's the guy from the local public middle school, Liam said, recognizing John. You know him? Liam looked somewhat enlightened. I see he's older, but we got to know each other through club activities and practice matches. We've even exchanged contact information. We met during the last exam period, and he seemed really troubled about his home situation. He even texted me earlier, saying he was troubled by how creepy his parents were acting during the trip and wanted to go home. I never thought we'd be at the same place now, I understand everything knowing these are his parents. This little Brett, there's no way he'd talk bad about his parents, John said, his voice laced with anger. Stop spewing nonsense. As John started yelling at Liam, Amelia stepped in to protect him. As an adult and as a salesman, that's no way to talk, Amelia said, her voice firm. It's embarrassing when I'm working. This is my private time. I can do what I want, right? As Amelia sighed, Liam began to speak. He told Amelia that his mother was still seeing his real dad, wondering how long he had to live with a man not related by blood. He wanted to apply to a nearby high school, close to his real father, but it was too competitive. Liam wanted to support him, so he got some past exam papers for his friend, and Henry, already mastering middle school subjects, had been helping him as a tutor. That's right, Henry said, his voice filled with sincerity. His feelings are genuine, but I heard that you guys are not allowing him to apply to that school, especially opposed by his mother. Can't you support him in his pursuit of freedom? Moved by her son's efforts, of which she was unaware, Amelia felt touched. When she looked at John, he was frozen. It's understandable, Amelia said, her voice calm. In the conversation, a shocking truth had been revealed. His real father. What are you talking about? John said, his voice laced with anger. I am his parent. If you keep up these lies, I'll sue for defamation. You agree, right? You can't let these absurd accusations slide. John sought agreement from his wife. She was visibly shaken and anxious. It seemed he finally caught on. Are you kidding me? John said, his voice laced with disbelief. You're saying their story is true? So you tricked me into marrying you? That's outrageous. No matter what you say, that woman won't open her mouth. You kids should go to him. He must be feeling lonely by now. The boys nodded and ran over to John's son. So where should we start? Henry asked, his voice filled with concern. What's the point of talking to you? You don't know anything, John said, his voice laced with frustration. I'll make her talk one way or another. Just take your kids and leave. You're a nuisance. Doesn't he consider moving away himself just like 15 years ago? Amelia said, her voice laced with sarcasm. You're being duped again. Maybe you should know what I found out after having it thoroughly investigated. Fine. Let's hear it then, John said, finally willing to listen. Amelia began to explain quietly. After their divorce, she couldn't let it go and had a detective look into it. It turned out that the woman was dating another man, and John was just the affair. It was impossible for him to have fathered her child. What? John said, his voice laced with disbelief. But she told me she had no boyfriend. It was absurd from the start. A married man and a college student? Because it's impossible for you who ain't got no seed. She was already pregnant by her boyfriend. That became clear quickly. Wait, wasn't it your issue? John said, his voice filled with a mixture of confusion and anger. I don't have any problems, Amelia said, her voice firm. I'm perfectly healthy. John had always assumed it was Amelia's fault, never wanting to hear his own test results. Even if he was shocked now that he knew the truth, it wasn't any of her business. If you think I'm lying, I'll send the results to your family home, Amelia said, her voice laced with a hint of triumph. Check for yourself. Want me to send a copy of the detective's findings too? No, don't, John said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. Then it would upset my mother. If what you're saying is true, why did she marry me instead of her boyfriend? John asked, his voice filled with a mixture of anger and confusion. They could just be together and raise the child. John was right. Amelia had thought the same thing. Her boyfriend's family was wealthy, and he was set to join his father's company. Getting her pregnant in college and marrying her would have disgraced his family. They strongly opposed it, refusing to allow the baby to be born and paid her off, desperate not to give up on their child's life. They used you, Amelia said, her voice filled with sadness. You're such a fool. Your story implies you're still with that man, and I was just played by them both, John said, his voice choked with frustration. His wife watched silently. Being with me for 15 years is like letting a child see his parents, right? John said, his voice laced with a mixture of anger and desperation. It's like agreeing to let a child see his parents after a divorce. When John sought confirmation from his wife, she shook her head apologetically. Seriously, you could at least not all to save the trip, John said, his voice laced with anger. "It's all ruined now, all because I ran into you again. You jinx." "Don't blame me," Amelia said, her voice firm. "You kept bothering me despite my efforts to keep my distance. It's your own fault for not trying to connect with your son, even if there was no love left. Legally, you're still married." As Amelia spoke firmly, John's wife, oddly enough, started crying. They looked like the villains. "You're right," John said, his voice laced with anger. "We are married, so I can't forgive you for making my wife cry." What was this man going on about? Normally, he would blame his wife and apologize to Amelia. "I'll pretend I didn't hear any of this and still sue you for defamation," John said, his voice filled with a mixture of anger and desperation. "That's ridiculous," Amelia said, her voice laced with sarcasm. "If you don't want to know more, you should have a proper talk with your wife." Despite Amelia's warning, John continued to rant. Over these 15 years, she had really tamed him, and Amelia admired her for that. As Amelia braced herself to reveal more, her husband Jack arrived. He stopped in his tracks, his face turning pale. John's wife stopped her fake crying and began trembling at the sight of Jack. "You arrived at just the right millisecond," Amelia said, her voice laced with a hint of triumph. "These are the people I was talking about before we got married." "Wait, why is our major client's executive here?" John asked, his voice laced with confusion and fear. "Your husband is this man." Jack was working for a large corporation, showing his skills as an executive. That corporation also happened to be a business partner of John's employer. Realizing the potential for a broken contract, John quickly caught on. "Look, my ex blames me for everything, even what his current wife does," Amelia said, her voice laced with a hint of amusement. "If I go into more detail, you'll get involved too. But are you okay with me telling everything?" Amelia checked with her husband, and he nodded. "Why does it matter to an executive?" John asked, his voice laced with confusion. "I don't quite understand." John suddenly switched to formal speech, making Amelia want to laugh. "These two are second cousins," Jack said, his voice calm and steady. John's expression turned to complete disbelief. "And your wife initially used my husband because they are second cousins, which made marriage possible," Jack continued, his voice calm and steady. "Not to mention, he's very handsome." Jack had a model-like stature and good looks. Even now, just standing there, he was attracting admiring glances from women. "She immediately turned to my husband for a solution, of course," Jack said, his voice laced with a hint of disgust. "He pushed her away, telling her to deal with her boyfriend, right? I asked her, but she ignored me. It doesn't matter if you deny it. He's a witness. The real father of your son would confirm it too." "Why did you continue the contract with our company knowing this?" John asked eagerly, his voice laced with desperation. "Don't involve my husband," Amelia said, her voice firm. "It's strictly business. You should understand that. Which is probably why you've remained at the same level all these years. Getting all high and mighty just because your husband showed up," John retorted, his voice laced with a mixture of anger and resentment. "Don't trust her. She's self-righteous because she used to gallivant around when she was married to me." "Persistent, aren't you?" Amelia said, her voice laced with a hint of sarcasm. "My mental health suffered because of you and your parents, leading to my irregular periods, and that's why I was medicated, not for contraception. If you doubt it, check the medical records from that time I visited the doctor because of the boys. Maybe the medical chart is still there." "It doesn't matter what you say," Amelia said, her voice firm. "I've told my husband everything, just get out of our sight." As Amelia stood firm, John fled. The boys returned. "Millie, he says he'll have a proper talk with his parents, so let's leave it at that for today," Henry said, his voice laced with a hint of concern. "Too many eyes here and someone might post it on social media." "He said since his parents can't be relied on, I'll handle it myself," Henry relayed to Amelia, then turned to John and his wife. "From a child's perspective, I can't stand the thought of living with parents who harbor such big lies. Don't underestimate him, because he is a child. Please support him." Henry glanced and winked at their son, displaying his charming nature. Amelia chuckled at her son's smooth-talking personality. He really takes after his father. "We've let our children speak this much. We failed as parents." Henry said, his voice filled with a mixture of sadness and anger. Reflect on that, and you two should have a heartfelt discussion. With nothing more to say, their argument ended. Later, Amelia heard from Liam and her husband that John demanded a divorce, leading to a heated argument with his wife. Neither would budge, resulting in a stalemate. Their son went to his biological grandparents' house and revealed everything. Then it really pissed off his biological grandparents. The wife and the real father were scolded severely. Then John was called in, and their divorce was finalized. The real father was disowned for deceiving his parents, and the boy was taken in by his grandparents. Although he couldn't live with his biological father as he wished, thanks to his grandparents allowing visits, he got to see his real father more often than before, and he was being raised as the heir instead of his biological father. As for John, he was pushed down the stairs by his wife in a fit of rage and taken away by an ambulance. His wife was arrested on the spot by the police and ended up in jail. John, having suffered a head injury, forgot about his wife and son, but somehow remembered Amelia as his wife and tried to take her away after being discharged. When he tried to take Amelia, possibly my sons who came back from school reported him to the police, and he was detained and placed under psychiatric care, being hospitalized at a hospital under police jurisdiction. As a result of this incident, he was fired from his job and abandoned by his parents, leaving him isolated. As for Amelia, she continued to live happily, supported by her loving family. Had her sons not been home at that time, their current peaceful life might not have existed. "Millie, is breakfast going to take much longer? Can I take a shower now?" Henry asked, his voice laced with a hint of impatience. "That's not fair, Henry," Liam said, his voice laced with a hint of annoyance. "I want a shower too. I'm sweaty from running." Amelia's considerate sons and her smiling husband made her feel grateful as she prepared their family meal. After watching full story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more awesome stories like this. Stay blessed and healthy. Thank you for watching and see you in the next story. Bye.